2021. The day America's democratic process was threatened by an angry mob determined to interfere with the election and peaceful transfer of power. Tomorrow's the one-year anniversary of the day hundreds, possibly thousands of people stormed the U.S. Capitol. Investigative reporter Ryan Race traveled to Washington, D.C. to talk to members of the Minnesota congressional delegation who were trapped that day. Watch now as they describe the broken glass, bloody floors, and the nation's shattered sense of security.
This is what will define January 6, 2021.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress.
But the footnote to this infamous day in our history is what was happening inside the Capitol before an angry mob took it over. Congress was counting the Electoral College votes as required by our Constitution.
I was in charge of the Electoral College on the Democratic side in the Senate.
State by state.
The electoral vote of the state of Arizona seems to be regular in form and
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar was helping certify the results of the 2020 presidential election.
The certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Alabama seems to be regular.
Roy Blunt, one of my best friends, was in charge of the Republican side.
Congressman Dean Phillips looked on from the House gallery.
I started getting texts to watch what was going on outside. I left the chamber with a colleague, actually, to look out the windows, and I saw the hundreds, if not thousands of people marching to the Capitol.
And many never stopped.
We're coming for you!
Determined to halt the business underway inside, the angry mob forced their way through the outnumbered police who were trying to hold them back.
It started with the noise, pounding on the doors, breaking of glass. Furniture was shoved in front of the seats. The House chaplain was issuing a prayer. People were crying. Many were making phone calls to their families, saying goodbye.
Phillips shared these photos he took that day, showing the destruction and the makeshift barricades. He, too, tried to reach loved ones back home in Minnesota.
What was that like?
Well, my disposition was to reassure my family I'd be okay. But the truth is, I didn't know if I would be.
These images capture their sheer terror. At one point, those trapped inside reached for gas masks stowed under their seats, a post-9/11 safety measure reserved for unprecedented attacks. Congressman Phillips still keeps the mask he used that day in his office cabinet.
Here it is. And what was most distinct and memorable about this is these devices make this whizzing sound. And when hundreds of them were in use that day on the Capitol floor, it was like an orchestra of this sound that I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
It's still unbelievable to me.
Congresswoman Angie Craig was ordered to shelter in place in her office. She recalls the play-by-play she received through text messages on her phone.
I remember the ones from my family the most.
It was a scary time.
Yeah. Your workplace is being attacked.
We also asked all 4 Republican members of Congress from Minnesota to sit down and talk about their experiences on January 6th. Not one of them responded to our invitation to do so.
There are still people in this building, colleagues, who think this was just a rally with a rowdy crowd. I don't think they like the word insurrection.
Yeah.
Still today.
My colleagues who try to justify what happened as sort of a tour group walking through the Capitol, did they step over the same broken glass and broken wood and blood that I did that night in going back to finish the job of certifying an election?
That was a night that wasn't easy for anyone. Obviously, we lost officers. It changed lives forever. But in the end, our democracy prevailed. There's Minnesota right there with our 10 electoral college votes.
Senator Klobuchar also keeps a reminder from that day in her office. Framed on her wall, the official roll call ballot.
There's Senator Blunt, there's me.
Signed around 4 a.m. on January 7th. She calls it her most memorable moment in the Senate.
That Republican senator from Missouri, Roy Blunt, and I, and Vice President Pence, only the 3 of us were left. No other senators were there. Walked over the shattered glass to the House and finished our job.
But the fallout from that day continues still 1 year later. Coming up tomorrow on Nightcast, we'll take a closer look at the defendants from Minnesota accused of playing a role in the Capitol riot and hear from one of their fiercest supporters, Kevin.
Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting and historic day. Thanks, Ryan.